let's talk about it presentation about my Walk the City project. You're kind to hear me out about this. So when Gwen and I moved to Buffalo in 1985 from Fort Lauderdale, we lived on Norwalk Avenue in North Buffalo, which runs off of Hurdle. And then we did that for a year, and then we rented a place down on Lafayette Avenue, only a couple blocks in from Grant Street. And one of the things we found, there's a famous quote from Gertrude Stein where she said about Oakland, California, she said, "There is no there there." You heard that? And one of the things we found about Buffalo is there's lots of there there. In other words, there are neighborhoods, discrete neighborhoods, with their own grocery store, their own church, and their own sense of identity. And we really found that living in North Buffalo and then down on the west side. And so one of the things I wanted to do as part of this project is to kind of experience Buffalo's different neighborhoods. Where I live, so we live on North Park Avenue, which is just off of Hurdle. If you know the North Park Theater, that's the cross street for that. And people in my neighborhood, Catholic or not, will, when they're asked where they live, they will often say, well, I live in St. Margaret's Parish. So there's a sense that that people identify their neighborhood with kind of the big, old Catholic church there, right? Which I thought that was kind of neat. So just to remind you of some of the neighborhoods in Buffalo, I walked through, and here's the map. You can see the map. North Buffalo, South Buffalo, Riverside, Black Rock, downtown, as much as you can call that a neighborhood, I guess. The Elmwood Village, the Valley, Kaisertown, out farther east, Seneca Babcock, Iron Island is a really interesting little niche neighborhood. Delvin Griner, the Cottage District, if you've never explored, is really cool on the west side. The Fruit Belt on the lower west side. The old First Ward, just east of downtown, is interesting. Allentown, of course. Broadway Fillmore, Larkinville, I had not much been in since the Yuppies took it over. And University Heights. This is not necessarily a comprehensive list, but all of these neighborhoods I was privileged to walk through. I guess a couple of things. I wanted to say about the sense of history that I found. As I walked, I got wondering how many bricks it took to build the city of Buffalo, because of so many big brick buildings, And one of the things I always like is to see on the sides of buildings the remnants of the painted signs of the thing that used to be there. The one I see a lot is Battenfeld Oils and Greases, and just like the remnants of that remind me that, the roots run deep here, and that's very different. If you lived in Florida, that would not be the case. So many commonalities, though, amongst all the neighborhoods that I walked. Everybody wants their Amazon packages delivered to the side door. Everyone gets insane if you don't pick up your dog poop, if you're a dog walker. And everybody wants Josh Allen for mayor. And as I walked through these neighborhoods, you could obviously tell the amount of money that's there, right? And where the houses were better valued, people had more money to put into them. Streets were cleaner for the most part. The infrastructure that the city put into those neighborhoods was better developed. The city just put new sidewalks on my block of North Park Avenue, and that is not the case on Lovejoy Street. So there's a real, I think Mayor Brown's done okay, but I think there's a little bit of an unequal distribution of resources is what I tried to say. And I thought a lot about the difference or the the edge between despair and hope or optimism in our lives, but in some of these neighborhoods. It seemed like in some neighborhoods people had kind of given up, you know, and in some they were still working to try to make the neighborhood better. A lot of block clubs, you know, I saw people just as a freelance picking up trash on the street. And, you know, I met once a pastor who served a UCC church down in Elmira, and she talked about kind of the overall ethos of that community. Remember that back in 1972, Hurricane Agnes came and just washed so much of Elmira away. And this pastor told me that they have never, as a city, fully recovered from that. There's still a sense of kind of fatalism around what's possible for their city. And it just really struck me that disasters or economic disasters even might carry on through the kind of mindset of the city. It struck me as very interesting. I thought about that as I walked. So I want to give you a chance to ask some questions about this insane project, but there are some that frequently come up, so I thought I might answer those as a starter. You may choose to call out these questions, Family Feud style, as they come up. Why? That is a good question. So I had read about a guy who did this, read this in the paper. He was like a retired church organist or something. He decided to do it. I actually called him up and talked to him about it, and he encouraged me, gave me some tips and such. I was retired at this point and needed a project, and thought that I could do it. So I started last July, and started in North Buffalo, and sweated my feet off doing that because it was hot, and then continued. So it took me overall 9 months, I guess. Finished just like a week ago or something, and we were away in February. But that's how it went. It seemed like a good project. You guys don't watch Family Feud, do you? So it was about 700 miles all told. My friend, the engineer, looked up a statistic called centerline miles, which is different from lane miles. And yeah, as far as I can tell, it was about 700. There were a number of dead-end streets. They were back, you know, so I had to do that. But that was the distance. How fast? I tried to average 4 miles an hour, which is a good brisk walk. And didn't always get there. Sometimes I got lost and that slowed me down. I also incorporated some running into this project, so, you know, 4.1 miles an hour for those distances. I didn't talk to too many people, partly because some of this was in the winter, but even during the nice weather, not all that many people out and about, you know. Some people, you know, I stumbled across a couple of panhandlers, you know, a couple of people just kind of interested and they talked about the project, but it was more like an athletic feat, I guess I construed it as for myself, rather than a get to know the people so much. As you know, I'm kind of an introvert, and so it's hard for me to glad hand people as well. And I didn't blog about it, I didn't take that many pictures. Talked to some kids.
Did you go at the same time every day? About the same time every day, like morning, afternoon?
Always daytime. No, depending on what was going on, morning,
okay.
Afternoon, whichever.
That would explain too why there were not people around. It was when they were
I
off
mean, people
working.
work for one thing, yeah.
Right,
So
yeah.
there was that. Did I feel safe, you ask? I did. I never felt at risk. I never felt threatened. There are neighborhoods where I stuck out like a sore thumb, obviously. And I have to say that if I were a woman or if I were a person of color, there are neighborhoods where I would not have felt safe. So I'm claiming my white guy privilege, I guess, there. But you know, at the church I previously served, Amherst Community Church, there were people who never went south of Kenmore Avenue. And you know, you lose a lot of sense of community in that way, and I encourage you all to go south of Kenmore Avenue. It's not scary at all. You would think that I lost weight, right? Did not lose weight. And this really brought home to me the truth that the only way to lose weight, and this is a hard truth, is to count every calorie. And that's totally no fun. You cannot exercise, for me anyway, could not exercise my way out of.
Did you eat more?
I ate a lot, yeah, that might have been the problem. My calves are very nice now. So there's that. Just a few more questions. Did you fall down? That is a good question. I only fell down one time, and that was downtown on Church Street. I'm wandering, I was gawking like a tourist at City Hall. Fell over a curb, just totally splayed out. And there were actual tourists behind me, like watching me do this. That serves me right, I guess. The knees held up well, I'm glad to report. So there's that. People ask about what I learned and what are my favorite parts of the city. There are so many cool neighborhoods. And even within neighborhoods that I didn't love, there are cool pockets, you know. The Cottage District, again, I mentioned, is a little snippet on the west side. I'm not remembering where exactly, but these tiny little cottages.
It's also Summer Street.
Yeah, exactly. You know, painted in those bright primary colors, and you know, it's on the garden walk. You know, really a neat little area. I really liked Rumsey Road over by the park. I liked. I'm trying to think. I like McKinley Parkway down on South Buffalo. You know, some beautiful old houses there. You know, there are. I have lived in plenty worse places than 99% of what I saw in the city. So that's what I have to say about that. I was surprised by a couple of things. For one thing, I was surprised at how enormous the East Side is. And you know, I had to say, you know, I've been on the East Side and I have a little bit of a sense of the East Side, but if you construe the East Side as everything east of Main Street, I mean, it just goes on and on and on. You know, giant industrial neighborhoods, but giant, you know, residential neighborhoods as well, and mixtures of those. So it just surprised me until I started walking in it, how much there was of the East Side. I was surprised by the weird zoning, I guess, and I think maybe that's a function of the city being as old as it is, and stuff being built before probably city engineers zoned, you know, in a way that controlled for growth. But there are a lot of neighborhoods where there's a giant factory and a row of houses right next to it, for example. And it just, or, you know, railroad tracks, and it just all jumbled in together. And that surprised me to see that. I was also surprised that people in those kind of neighborhoods, like those industrial neighborhoods, built houses there, right? I mean, and you could see a lot of them were people who've been there forever and are just going to die there, and they're happy to kind of live in that little niche. But there are people who tore down their old house and built, you know, looked like a nice $150,000 house or something there, making me wonder, you know, if you've got $150,000, you know, why are you building exactly there and not elsewhere where there might be different opportunity in different neighborhoods? So I don't know the answer to that. I was also surprised at some of the cars in just, you know, in front of crap old houses, some enormous Escalade or something, and thinking, you know, do you not have a financial planner, you know, to help you figure out some of this? This is, I think, a blind spot in my own understanding, but it did not make sense to me the way people put money into their cars. That's all. Oh, what am I going to do for an encore? Well, now I'm working again, and I do not have time to do this. I think I'm going to pour my energy into being interim minister of Church of the Nativity. We'll see how that project works out, right? Yeah. So that's that. Let me just show you a few pictures. I did not take a ton of pictures, but some that will illustrate some points. And then if you all have comments or questions, I'm happy to kind of entertain those as well. Some incredible churches. You know about churches built by, Polish immigrants, in the 19th century, one nickel at a time. And I should have written them all down, but gorgeous places of worship. Yeah, incredible. Imagine their heat bill, right? Yeah. Not church related, a random piece of art of unknown provenance.
Where is that?
Yeah. I want to say that's. I want to say that's in Riverside, but I couldn't swear to it. Yeah. Clark and Kent Street, that made me laugh. A little bit of suspect theology. This is Santa kneeling at the creche of the Christ child. What exactly is going on there? I don't know. This is Central Terminal, of course, and got a couple pictures of Central Terminal. I love Central Terminal. I really hope that it turns into something, but just a couple more pictures. Just an amazing building. Love that building. You may remember Kinko's Copies. This is Kiniko's Copies. I thought it was a typo, but no. Their website is kinikos.com, and go figure. Saw some animals, yeah. So there are rights of ways along railroads. There's some undeveloped or Mayor's Impact team has knocked down stuff, and so there are deer. I saw deer. Plenty of outside cats. What else did I see? Some kind of a hedgehog. A few rats, not tons of rats. They may be more apparent at night, including in my neighborhood, actually. I think there's, Truth Barbershop, which I just like the name of. This was a sign down in South Buffalo. You can't read it. Let's take a moment to honor the sacrifice of our brave school children who laid down their lives to protect our right to bear arms. That is a trenchant piece of First Amendment right there. But that was good. This was a light post some artistic person made beautiful. I thought that was interesting. Whole median full of those. So, good thoughts, good deeds is a city of good neighbors. Somebody's opinion, I guess. I forgot to mention the turkeys. Saw some turkeys, wild turkeys there. Enormous. This was a license plate that made me laugh. Anybody decipher that? Be a Duran Duran fan, right? And here's a person on the front of their Escalade. Good God! Not sure what the inflection is. This is just a random house. One thing I noticed is in all sorts of neighborhoods, there are just enormous houses that, if you had a big family, you could, I suppose, fill it up. I'm sure most of them are chopped up into fourplexes or something, but, you know, look at the gables on that, look at the stained glass there and stuff, and whatever this thing is called. Just really neat. It made me wish I could swing a hammer, you know, because I would love to rehabilitate and work with some of these houses. And they're everywhere. They're really everywhere. And you all know Niagara Falls Boulevard, of course, with the bricks. Every once in a while, you run across a beautiful brick street, paved like that, you know, in 1890 or something, and doing great. So it's an amazing thing that those bricklayers knew what they were doing back then. And then this is the last of it. So I'm not a big graffiti fan, but this guy shows up everywhere. He is all over the place. So if you drive down the Scajaquada Expressway, there's a big one outside of Upstate, but little ones, big ones, everywhere. This guy whistling a heart. This guy whistling a heart down on Ogden Street. This guy down in South Buffalo, all the way across the railroad trestle. It just made me happy to see that. You know, as much as it defaces public property, I think that is a good message to stumble across. That's really what I've got to share, but I'd be happy to answer further questions you have. Yeah, Meryl.
I guess I'm kind of surprised I don't know every single neighborhood. What's the valley? I've lived here my whole life. I don't know.
Valley, yeah, down, it's down in here, I think. So it's definitely south of William Street.
Okay.
It's Irish, I think. Up against some railroad tracks there. It's like triangular shape or something. Yeah. Yeah. What else is there?
Yeah, I was brought up in what they call the university district,
Yeah.
and that changed. I mean, when I lived there, it was families, class, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then the college students came in, and it's not.
There's a lot of college rentals back there. So close. Some beautiful houses back there, and still plenty of families. I know a professor who lives there, but yeah. Chris, yeah.
How did you keep track of where you were and where you needed to be? And
So I had this road map that I took and had, you know, enlarged obviously, and this is where I, every day when I came home, I would color in where I had been. But I just copied off a section that I thought I could walk and had a little piece of paper in my pocket. Okay, yeah, just kind of did it until I fell over. Usually about 6 or 7 miles a day. 2 in the morning, sometimes on the run. Beth?
Did you include, like, when you walk by South Park, did you go walk the park too, or
I
did you
didn't.
not do the parks?
Yeah, I didn't walk roads that were basically walking paths, I guess. You know, I walked the ring road in Delaware a lot, of course. But no, I didn't. So yeah, South Park. Yeah, still, where is South Park? Yeah, still untouched, but I walked every street up to it, you know, and that kind of thing. So, yeah, Linda.
So you would drive to an area?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
park and then,
yeah.
and in the winter, were most of the sidewalks cleared?
Well, I didn't go out, you know, like right after the blizzard, you know, and have some sense. Off and on. I mean, actually, you know, even after the blizzard, we had that warm weather, and so it didn't take long for sidewalks. There were plenty of times when I had to walk in the street because of the sidewalks. The actually most dangerous place was in some dead-end street up, where was it? Over by Bennett High School. Absolute sheet of ice for some reason that day. This was not during February, and I know you guys had ice, but yeah, I do this all the time. So, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, when you were talking about the cars, it reminded me of something that I had heard years ago, and I don't know if it still pertains, but because of not being able to get loans and not being able to move into certain areas, that's where the people put the money in the cars,
Yeah.
because they could not spend it
That
elsewhere.
may,
I don't know if it
Makes
still
sense, yeah.
retains,
Yeah.
I'm sure it does
Yeah.
to some
Because
extent.
there's
Yeah.
still redlining going on.
Yeah, well, that's what I,
and again, I'm sure that's, just a blind spot in my understanding, but yeah, that makes sense.
I've been listening to WVFO, What Next?
Yeah,
And it's amazing what we did not know. What stumbling blocks, they couldn't get loans to improve their housing.
Yeah.
People that even had jobs, well, you made too much money, and they couldn't get that low interest.
yeah.
It was just so
So maybe
uneven
an
and.
access to credit question, I think you're right.
Exactly, exactly.
Um,
And another thing is, when coming back from Florida, when we were coming up through Pennsylvania, we stopped at Waynesburg, and I was looking for an artist that I saw when we stopped at the rest stop.
Yeah,
Anyway, we didn't find it, but going through that countryside and getting back on, 79, I guess it was, again, I mean, the poor housing, but the cars and the
Yeah,
trucks,
yeah.
and going out to Chautauqua, in the back roads, you see the same thing.
yeah. One thing I would remind all of us is that the GI Bill, which made the suburbs possible after
Yeah.
World War II,
Yeah.
specifically excluded black soldiers.
Yeah.
And, that was pretty shameful, and I think the effects of that have redounded, all these many years. Anything else? Bruce?
You mentioned the mayor's, I forget what you call the
The
effort to tear down.
The impact teams,
Impact
yeah.
So when you walk through those neighborhoods where there's maybe half of the lots still have houses on them in some areas, do you have a sense of what's happening to that land? I don't know who owns it, maybe somebody here has an answer to that.
Yeah.
But what is it being kept? Is it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing the city owns it, I don't know that for sure. Mostly, it's kept mowed and such, but not anything much in the way of development. And it's funny, thinking of dental work, you walk through those neighborhoods and it's like every other tooth is missing, It's just a very different feeling than a fully built out neighborhood. Yeah.
There was another thing that they talked,
Okay.
about, these open lots, people that had tried to buy them, and the process was ridiculous.
Really?
Yes, people that live there, they wanted to expand, or they wanted to do other things
Yeah.
in those neighborhoods, and they've been blocked. I mean,
I wish your government would make it easy, not hard. Yeah.
uh-huh. So there's a lot of political stuff going on.
City resident, Pastor Dan.
Yeah, I agree that it's very difficult to get a hold of those vacant lots, and the city wants to get as much money as they can from them, as opposed to wanting to find people that will creatively fill in those vacant places. But that wasn't my question. My question was, so Frank Lloyd Wright came to Buffalo sort of near the beginning of Buffalo's rebuilding, because it had been burned during the War of 1812. And in New York City, he had been hired to make a grand park inside of the city, which was Central Park, of course. He got hired by Buffalo, and his vision was, instead of putting a park inside of the city, he would put the city inside of his park system. And I wondered if you were able to walk up and down those parkways enough, from Delaware Park down to the botanical gardens
Right.
and parkways in between, to get a sense of the city being knit together by those parks and parkways.
Yeah.
And if you did get a sense of it, was it as pleasing as I think it is supposed to be?
Yeah. You're not thinking Frank Lloyd Wright, though. Olmsted, right, yeah, exactly. I have to say that I really was impressed by the park system in general. A lot of beautiful little pocket parks, as well as the kind of murky big ones, and very well kept. I think I think Delaware, I think South Park are beautifully kept. I don't know that I got, that kind of 20,000 foot perspective, because I'm on the next street, So you're right, I might have made it a better point to appreciate the kind of design. You can recognize it looking at the map, you can recognize it from the air, I think, sometimes from an airplane, you can see that. But the fact of those parkways and the houses on them and the prestige attached to the Kinley Parkway, to Rumsey Road, some of those places, you can tell that was, that was intended to be kind of a jewel of the design. Interesting. Okay.
Just one other thing.
Yeah.
I had occasion to go to the Fruit Belt when I was a young teenager, and I was always very, very surprised. We were visiting a couple that were white, and how beautifully they were taken care of by the black neighbors around them. When things would happen, they would be right there, protecting them in their house. I was always so, surprised by that, but wonderful.
Yeah,
It was such a good feeling that they really care for each other.
I guess the lesson is there's no broad brush, that people are people, and even in the most difficult neighborhoods, there were individual houses, manicured to, people who trim their lawn with manicure scissors, those you got those kind of people, right? So people are people, and that was kind of what we saw. All right, John has the last question. Okay.
It's not a question.
Okay.
I'd like to comment that I and my 9 brothers and sisters were born and raised and grew up in the city of Buffalo.
Yep.
On the east side of Buffalo. Many, many moons ago, my grandfather owned considerable property in that area around the Grider Street, East Elvin Avenue section of the city.
Yep.
The city wanted to take some of his property by eminent domain. And Grandpa says, no, you won't do that. I will donate the property to you. There's a street that runs between East Elvin Avenue and Northland Avenue. Its name is North Longview Avenue. Longview. 144 Longview Avenue is where I was born at 6:30 in the evening, lived by Dr. Hitzel. Brothers and sisters. Last August, I walked that neighborhood again with Mayor Brown, who was running in a primary contest. And I was amazed that my old homestead, 144 Longview, was still there, still in very good condition.
Oh, that's great.
And it brought back a lot of memories as I grew up as a kid on that East Elvin Avenue, Brighter Street section of the city of Buffalo. Buffalo is still a beautiful, wonderful city. There's some tremendous, beautiful neighborhoods in that city. And I would never think of moving in. If I'm going to live in a city, that's where I want to live, someplace in the city.
Great. Your grandfather took the long view, I guess. Okay.
Show your shoes.
The shoes. I don't know. They held up pretty well. They're basically my running shoes.
Are you going to write a book?
All right, Meryl has the last. Okay. Meryl, then Larry, then we're done. Laurel, I'm sorry.
Is there any neighborhood that you would walk again, or is there any neighborhood that you didn't walk that you would want to?
Well, so I walked them all.
Okay.
So there's that. Yeah, I mean, sure. I really liked the West Side neighborhood just south of the park. Where those splays out a little bit. I'm not great with the names. I guess the dumb answer is yes. There are some beautiful neighborhoods, and if I get the urge to walk again, I would definitely walk along. Okay, Larry.
I just wanted to add, I was a social worker on the east side for over a decade. And I I used to think of that as the slums of Liverpool, because that's the word I grew up with in the 50s, I think, I came up with that word or something. And Arlene Paucus, who was the CEO of the United Way, talked to me one time and she said, you know, that is one of the biggest resources in the city that's untapped. And that people who, with the right training center like Northland Training we have now, and stuff like that, we can use this resource for Buffalo and not using people like, plug in the energy for this guy. I just want to say that because when I look at the map, my instinct is, oh, where's the slum? Oh, it's over there. But it's a gold mine.
Says something about the power of words for good or ill, I guess. Thank you for that. Okay, let's break it off just because I don't want to keep it all too long. Thank you for listening.